the infrastructure investment has taken place to get hold of a market like this because of the benefits. They're so big, they can support a country.
We just opened up a YPAC, which is our yacht paint application center.
Yeah, I
It,
saw this. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
in
right next to the show, isn't it?
yes.
Welcome to the ICOMIA podcast, where we're supporting the marine industry's most important conversations. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ICOMIA podcast, where the industry's most important conversations take place. Before we begin, I always thank our sponsors, AkzoNobel, for making these conversations possible. And I am, of course, going to do that again. So thank you to them for their support. But today we've actually got Matt Anzardo on the podcast to tell us a little bit about the coatings and their engagement with ICOMIA. So we've actually got the sponsor on the podcast, which is great. So welcome on, Matt, and let's start, I suppose, with a little introduction of yourself.
Thanks, Ben, for the opportunity to come on the podcast. This is a great opportunity. I really enjoy watching the show, the series are. But yeah, a little bit about me. I grew up in the boating industry. My father started an upholstery business, awnings and upholstery, in South Jersey, and so he started working on boats, doing canvas. And when I was a teenager, I worked in the shop. My brothers now run the business, so we've been on boats since basically from a little kid all the way up now, and it's just been really passionate about boating and being on the water. Yeah, and so after college, I got a job with Interlux. I moved up to North Jersey, and I was interviewing for their technical helpline. It's just helping boaters with their questions. And one of the questions in the interview was, "Do you know what the pointy end of the boat is?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's the bow." And that was one of the deciding factors, because they wanted to know how I could interact with boaters and understand the language and the passion that boaters have, right? And coatings can be taught. I like to joke that nobody's ever said after graduating college, "I want to go into paint and coatings," right? It's just the coatings just kind of finds you, and it's a great passionate part of the boating industry. Um, and over the last 20 plus years that I've been with AkzoNobel, it's been a great opportunity to move from the technical side of things to the sales to marketing. So I've had a whole lot of different roles within the company, from regional to global, and managing, as a marketing manager, managing all of the yacht brands that we have: All Grip, Interlux, International, and Seahawk, which is our recent acquisition. And really focusing and understanding the technology and the passion that goes into building boats, maintaining boats, all that facets of that. And that's what I'm really proud of, is to help convey that story of how did coatings help protect boaters, and how do we make it simpler for the applicators and the do-it-yourselfers.
Yeah, it's so good hearing stories like this because you're right. It's absolutely not one of those careers that you're in primary school. What do you want to be? I want to do this. You would not describe what you're doing today. But at the same time, you could actually say, well, you love boating, you love that environment, and what would be a better industry to work in than actually the supply chain and everything around that? So
There is not.
it's not
It really
uncommon,
isn't.
not at all.
When we bring new people on, I kind of say, "You're never going to go someplace bad. You're going to go someplace nice on the water. You're not going to somewhere in the middle of air looking at a refinery or something. You're going to be on the water." And that's what's the great thing about this industry.
Yeah, if
And
it's
also
not
the people.
there, yeah.
And the people are so passionate.
From the technical side, what's the really important engagement that AkzoNobel has with ICOMIA? Why do you do that?
On the technical side, so part of it is, let me kind of go back to some of the history there. Um, so when tributyl tin was phased out by the IMO in 2002, you know, we started seeing this change in regulatory. And that was a good thing, to phase out TBT in the coatings as a biocide. And as we started, more and more regulations were coming in place. And it really started in 2003. Some regulators in the Netherlands were looking at, how do we ban other parts of the biocides in there, in the coatings, such as copper. And so we started working with Albert Williamson, who actually was with his what, and he actually helped advocate for understanding what fouling control really is. And if you just start eliminating all these different biocides, you also run the risk of, maybe risk of rising invasive species, because now you might take a boat from one area to another, which could actually have a detrimental effect on there. We've seen that in North America with zebra mussels. They came in from another part of the world, ships. Bilge they emptied out, and now they're pervasive throughout the Midwest lakes. And so that's one of the benefits of having fouling control, is to mitigate invasive species. So while we're all for about looking at the regulatory and side of things, but we have to do this in balance. And from that initial conversation, then in 2005, we joined ICOMIA as part of this, because we saw ICOMIA as part of the um, a unified voice, because of all the different subcommittees that are part of that. And how do we bring that together? Because we think about coatings 100% of the time. Our customers think about it about this much. But if you're a boatyard or an applicator or a builder or a retailer or a do-it-yourself, there's all these other different regulations that are coming into play here, and you're being inundated about, what do I do? And having ICOMIA as a central voice there really helps explain that, and helps us have that conversation with the different government bodies.
So would I be right in saying like it helps on two fronts? One is you can see the regulation coming, you understand, okay, well, th say these materials might not be able to be in various different products in a couple of years' time. So let's start the R&D process now, be ready for when that comes in to make sure you're fully compliant and ahead of regulation. But then also making sure that, I suppose, regulation that would simply not benefit the industry, the environment, or generally for the welfare of everyone in the industry, if it wouldn't be beneficial, you can have that voice and you can present it to government.
Right. And sometimes you're these regulations are coming from other industries, right? And so you might have something from the automotive or the aerospace industry flowing into the yacht, and it may just be a blanket approach to this, but it may not work effectively with the technologies that are currently available, with the processes that are in place with the boatyards, where builders, um, but it's also, that's part of it, and understanding where the regulatory roadmap is going to be, talking to the regulatories. But a third part is also educating, right? And that's where, we've been really helpful, where we've kind of taken some ownership here. We've been part of the chemicals group, and the biofouling group, that's currently chaired by my friend and colleague, Hans Lechtenhorst. And now they just moved that, merge that into the applicators group. Again, we're trying to elevate the not only the professionalism in there, but also understand the regulatory drivers that are going to be affecting all of us across the industry.
You mentioned these ICOMIA subcommittees. So what do they actually do? Is that just a bunch of gatherings? How do you share information? What does that actually mean in terms of like what happens?
So it's a great question. And so with these subcommittees, you have people from all the different companies that are in there that are affected by that group. Let's say the applicators group. So you're going to have some.
Right. So different stakeholders, they might be competitors, but
Exactly.
it's
There might
more
be
like
competitors.
a
There are going to
friendly
be
table where they can share knowledge. Yeah.
everyone shares the same knowledge about what's happening in the industry, and where you say, this is where we want, and this is kind of where we want to get to. And you're also getting the feedback from the applicators. There's also like a marinas group, right? And talking about what's happening with the marinas, because there might be some stormwater runoff issues that are affected. So how do we do this? How do we educate the customer and the in the industry all the way through? One example that we've done with that is, being part of these different committees and work streams to create different documents. So one of the documents, I just happen to have a copy right here, is the paint color guide, right? And where we helped with a couple other companies to really help understand what color is, and how do you get the best finish out of it. There's a lot of technology that we have, and a lot of knowledge that we've gained over 100 plus years that we've been operating in the yacht industry, and how does color work? How do you minimize these issues? And how do you raise the standards? There was another one on ceramic coatings, where we actually had a ceramic manufacturer in that work stream, where we actually held that, all right, these are the pluses and minuses of this type of coating over something else. And then you have to be aware of these issues when you want to remove it, so that way you have a better paint job at the end. So we're working with all these different groups to actually elevate the industry and the knowledge and make it much more professional. And that's one of the things that we have seen because of ICOMIA over the last 15, 20 years, is this more professionalism, more standards being put into place. And that's the benefit of it, because we all want to have a very good product be applied. We want the boat owner to 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 feel satisfied with what they want. We want it to last a long time and give all the performance that you want out of the coating or any other system, whether it's engines or whatever.
And then, so for example, the paint color guide, how would that be used? Who would it help?
It helps the applicators and it helps the manufacturers to understand this. So you can kind of understand, like, these are some of the pitfalls that happen, where, like, when you're mixing color, you might have some flotation or leveling or whatever. And then you just talk about how do you minimize that. So again, elevating that standard of education among their and actually I believe that that book is available off of ICOMIA's website. Shameless plug there. Um,
And and
but
and and will this cover guidance? Like you mentioned, like for the applicator, would it also cover guidance around, say, environmental responsibilities and how it should be disposed of and things like that?
all of that is there, and that's all part of. There's all these other documents that ICOMIA puts together and sends out that that are fed in from not just from one source, but from multiple sources within the industry to say this are the best practices.
So AkzoNobel, pretty dominant leader in the coating space, a very dominant leader to be honest. And what do you guys do in terms of a process to develop new products, to innovate? And we've talked a bit about how that knowledge is spread to the industry, is also absorbed from the industry. But how do you do R&D in coatings? How does that work?
That is the $1 million question, right?
It is, yeah.
A couple of things. One is we understand, we have an idea what's happening with the regulations coming in. We can start seeing some trends. And then we also are actually actively talking with the applicators. We're talking with the distributors. We're talking with the builders. We're talking with retailers and do-it-yourselfers. And we're getting that feedback of what they want. And we know that we're going to need to make more sustainable products and utilize more. And we actually have a full um, life cycle assessment that we do from cradle to grave on all the raw materials that are produced or that goes into that. And we understand what that looks like and we put a profile together. And then we're looking at, what are the drivers and the needs of the product? How do you make sure that's performance? Performance has to be number one. If it doesn't work, nobody's going to use it. If it's not, even if it is the most sustainable, if it doesn't work, nobody's going to go with it. So then how do you take that and build that into there? So, I mean, we have a couple examples like our All Grip HDT, high definition technology, which is a low VOC, which is VOC compliant without using exempt solvents. You can actually get VOC compliancy with using exempt solvents, but basically they just don't count in the calculation. But this one does not use exempt solvents. It has a higher gloss, longer lasting, it's durable, repairable. So you're getting all the benefits that you want um, with a lower environmental profile. So that's one of the things that we developed. We have next generation biocide free coatings coming out. We have some, and there will be more coming out with our Be Free range, which stands for biocide free, and moving that forward. And then other system processes that we reduced. We have a spray filler that's for new build applications on super yachts, where it can reduce the application time by up to 3 times. And you minimize any rework because there's no air pockets in there when you apply. And a really exciting one that we have is, again, this is all in the aggregate, is our gloss finish primer in our All Grip range that we just launched. It combines a finish primer and a high gloss finish at the same time, but as a show coat, so you can actually see your imperfections, any highs or lows that you need to adjust before you go ahead and do the final application. So it's reducing a step. And on a super yacht, when it's hand applied, that is a big amount
That's a lot
of
of time.
cost.
That's a lot of time. That's the product that would otherwise be applied and stuff. Yeah.
And also the heating or the air conditioning of the facility too. So all of this comes in there. That's why I say it's always in the aggregate, not necessarily in the singular.
I think the industry's in a bit of a tough place. Just generally, I think there's some parts of the industry that are kind of nice to haves that at times like this, people and organizations tend to cut out. What do you think the biggest challenge in the industry is right now around the coating side?
I think regulations, to be
Right.
honest with you. And I say that because there's a lot of different changes happening. Um,
And are
so
these largely driven by the commercial maritime sector, and then kind of naturally we kind of get obligated into it, or do they operate quite differently?
there's a flow, but it's generally coming from a lot of different areas, right? Um, so yeah, some of it is driven by other industries coming in there. So like let's say VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that is becoming a much more dominant issue. It is in North America. I think in Europe, you're starting to see this. You're also seeing a lot of yards being a lot more proactive in what is their their VOCs that they're utilizing and understanding what that looks like to be part of some of the directives that will be coming. You also see this from anti-fouling regulations, like in Europe with the BPR, biocidal product regulations. Um, those kind of regulations are there, but you also have some other changes that are coming in through either a raw material that gets classified as maybe not as healthy. So, for a consumer, an example would be isocyanates. We pulled out isocyanates from the market, from the DIY market, because of the health risk involved there. And that's been something from the industry, from the regulators that says this is not good for do-it-yourselfers, because the professionals will wear the proper safety equipment. So those are kind of the things that are driving there. There's also raw material issues, Ben, in terms of sometimes with the yacht products, there's specialized products that are used, and they might be low volume, and they may not make the cut for some of these feedstocks to keep on producing. So then it's a challenge for us to reformulate or adjust to alternatives. And then there's a regulatory approval process too. So that is, I would say, is encompassing of like some of the challenges as a coatings company you have. But again, going back to the wider industry, you also have this in engines. You also have this in other things where you have all these different initiatives coming in.
So am I right in thinking if you needed to change a product with different, I'm going to say ingredients, I hope that's the right term, and then actually as soon as you adjust that, that is then a different product entirely. And so you then need to make sure it's compliant with all the different regulations before it's available to market. So there's quite a long delay there between we actually have a solution, we know it'll work, but we can't give it to the industry yet because it's not approved and it's not responsible to get it out there. And so you go through all these processes. Once it's approved, it's now responsible. Now let's get it to the industry. Is that a bit more?
That is it. Yes, because especially with fouling control, when you have anti-foulings like with biocides on there, they're very regulated in that regard. The other element you have is also adoption. You kind of hit on this or hinted at this, is that it takes a long time for a product to get developed. We're talking 3 to 5 years, depends on what that is, and go through regulatory approvals. What you also have is a very conservative nature of our industry of not accepting change, right? And they've been using the same type of products maybe for years. Um, we have one product, All Grip Top Coat, that's been essentially the same for about 50 years, and people have started and ended their careers using the same product. And so there's this. It is crazy. It's amazing, but that adoption process is very slow because, taking on that risk, because a lot of our customers and boatyards builders are independent companies, right? And they have to be responsible for all of their customers that they have, either the boats that they're delivering or the boats in the marina, and they want to have that confidence. They're knowing that that product is going to work, because at the end of the day, it's their reputation on there. And so our job is to help give the products the performance that they need, and also the confidence that they know. So we go through all the testing, we go through all of the approvals, we go through all of that performance stuff, so that way we can show that to them, and they can say, "All right, I have confidence that this is going to work."
Yeah, you can see how important things like trust becomes, any social proof, referrals, just like, look, yeah, this gigantic shipyard's using it. Okay, right. Let's start to show interest here and see what it's all about. And then eventually you get to wider adoption and adoption by different verticals of the industry.
And we're really proud of our technical and sales teams, because they're applicators. They've been in the boatyards,
Yeah, I
like
feel
a
like
lot
they've
of our
been
tech.
there and done it. They've
They've done the
been applicators and worked with the shipyards for years. Yeah.
They've been under the boats, they've been on the scaffolding, they've been in the villages painting all this stuff. So they understand the day-to-day activities that go into coating a boat. And so that's where it adds a little bit of um, gravitas, if you will, and understanding of what goes in there. And so when we develop those products, we bring that input in there, so that way we make it easier for the customer to apply the products, whether it's a DIY customer or a professional.
So we've talked a lot about essentially collaboration between actually between competitors and different stakeholders in the same space around our industry, trade associations, obviously ICOMIA specifically. What can be done to really improve that? What would you love to see in the future of really enforcing that for the good of the industry?
I think it's important for all of us to be involved in the marine trades, right? In getting together as an industry and having a unified voice. Um, and I think ICOMIA helps to do this, because ICOMIA just joined forces are a couple of elements with National Marine Manufacturers Association in North America, right? Bringing that together. And at AkzoNobel, we're very proud to be part of other trade groups too, like the International Superyacht Society, the ISS, the SIBAS group, the Waterfront Revolution. All of these different things, all different industries and trade groups, are all important about helping to educate everyone else about the boating nature. If we look at um, the superyacht side of things, a lot of people see that as opulent and over the top. And what a lot of people, once you get past that surface look of it, there's a lot of other innovation that's happening. There's a lot of dedicated people that love the industry, that are craftsmen at what they do, in building the boats, doing the interiors, the design work, the engines. All of this is in there, just on the build set. And then you also have the same group that does the refit and the maintenance of this, and then the crews. All of that is all to encompassing of what this industry is. And I don't think we as an industry have done a very good job of conveying that message of all of the value that comes from all of these jobs, of all these skilled craftsmen coming into and working on these yachts. Yes, a 100-meter yacht is a big boat and it is opulent, but there's a lot of support that goes in there, and a lot of local businesses that are beneficiaries of that yacht coming into a port somewhere, and the crews and everyone else spending that money in order to maintain that vessel. And the same goes for a small 18-foot boat or a 6-meter boat, right? There's still that added benefit for the boatyard and for that local economy.
Yeah, it always amazes me how many people a shipyard employs. Like, you're just looking at the sheer human resource that they take. Like, some of these large shipyards, I mean, you very quickly get to 100 employees. There's plenty with 1,000, if not thousands. It's, I mean, obviously it's an industry, but considering how few large yachts there are on the entire planet, the amount of people that it employs and amount of organizations it actually supports and funds is quite tremendous. The locations they're going to and bring in like a luxury tourism market too, also incredible. You see the impact in the Caribbean and things like that. You see the Australian government. I'm going to Sanctuary Cove this year to basically say like, look, the Australian market, they've made a huge investment in super yacht infrastructure to try and get them down there, and they can be refit down there, they can be maintained. It's all kind of like the infrastructure investment has taken place to get hold of a market like this because of the benefits. They're so big, they can support a country.
We just opened up a YPAC, which is our yacht paint application center.
Yeah, I saw this. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's right into the show, isn't it?
yes, in Coomera, right? And so what that is we have these other locations throughout Europe and North America, but this was our first one in Asia Pacific that really actually helps bring in the local applicators in there and trains them on the application, the techniques, the products, and it's classroom and in a spray booth to really help elevate the industry. And that's what we want to do, is elevate the industry. And I think a lot of other companies want to elevate that industry, elevate our industry in bringing that next level of skill up there, because that's the other thing, right, Ben? We actually don't have a lot of people coming into the trades, so this is an opportunity for us to help train them. I mean, we've also invested in virtual reality training, so that way we can go to a location, and it's actually a real spray gun, real kind of virtual reality setting, and you can actually improve your technique and help upskill those new entry people into a bit, instead of having maybe a 5-7 year apprenticeship, compress that down much quicker.
Yeah, I've seen this. I've seen it in some of the industry events where you could do it on a booth. You're there just spraying. But I mean, when you really think about it, it's like a great use of VR. I'm a bit of a tech geek anyway, but I don't think it's a great use of VR, but also just from like an accessibility point of view, like they're not using paints to practice. They don't need a boat there. They don't need to go to a shipyard. They could do it anywhere, and it's I suppose a step forward in terms of accessibility, communicating what the industry and the opportunities it can present. It's incredibly positive. Like I'm amazed all the time that we have a skill shortage. Like you look at all the trends and what people want. I mean, like I came in the industry about 5-6 years ago. And travel an awful lot, meet some amazing people, amazing destinations, the experiences. Like walk on boats now, like it's just kind of normal. People don't do that. Like people never step on a large yacht. That is completely normal. But I mean, you go to these places, it's just
Exactly. And going back a little bit to that training, is also that VR training is a capability to show people who aren't familiar with it, with what we do in an industry, to say this is how hard it really is. It's just not taking a spray gun and going like this. It really is hard. It's skilled to understand how far to keep the gun away from the surface and all. So those are kind of things that we're trying to do, and I know ICOMIA is doing that at the same time as well too, to elevate this. And we've talked about some of the training elements there, and that's where I think we can all work together to elevate the industry.
absolutely. Let's leave it there. Matt, thank you very, very much for coming on the ICOMIA podcast. Thank you to AkzoNobel for the support and making these conversations possible. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Ben.
Everybody, that's the ICOMIA podcast. Today's guest was Matt Anzardo from AkzoNobel. We'll see you again very, very soon. I hope you enjoyed that and found that very, very insightful. All being well, we'll see you again soon. Bye.